Welcome to another episode of the Orange Nerd Show. In today's episode, we're going to talk about David Zaslav, the newly appointed CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery. We're also going to talk about this new global communications director at the Walt Disney Company, Kristina Schake. We have a lot to discuss today, so let's dive right in. Welcome to another episode of the Orange Nerd Show. I brought my good friend, collaborator, producer Dre, host of Freshly Squeezed, Mr. Vashkai. How you doing today, sir?
Doing pretty good. Happy to be here. If you want to see me, well, it's going to be, if you want to interact with me, it's going to be on Twitter at Vashkai right down there. Having some really interesting conversations on there, that is for sure. Times they are changing, folks, and they're moving fast. So it's been an interesting discussion on there. But anyway, to see me, well, that's going to be on the channel you're watching right now, Orange 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. There you go.
Perfect. Okay, so let's dive right into the first topic, which is Warner Brothers Discovery. Yeah. There was an article that was released the other day from the Hollywood Reporter. Okay. And basically, I'm going to set the table just a little bit, though. For those of you that are not aware, Discovery ended up buying or merging with Warner Brothers. So this new company is now Warner Brothers Discovery. And the Discovery CEO, David Zaslav, is now running this mega company now, right? It's under Zaslav's control now. He's making a lot of changes. So Hollywood Reporter did this piece, and I'll link it down below. But basically, it says here that David Zaslav, Warner Brothers Discovery empire takes shape, less red tape, more quote unquote accountability. It says here, as the mogul takes the helm of the newly minted Hollywood giant, the CEO makes his first big moves and signals a less formal approach. He wants to call you and get an answer. And there is the magic maker himself, Mr. Zaslav. Okay, so Dre, this is interesting. This is kind of the changing landscape here, here in Hollywood. You read the article. What are your overall thoughts on Zaslav, this Warner Brothers Discovery situation? Like, just out the gate, what are your initial thoughts?
It's the article kind of makes clear that there's a juxtaposition of styles, which we'll get into in a moment. But look, Zaslav has, I think, impressed the right people. I think he's impressed, the entertainment moguls out there. I think he's impressed the media. And he has definitely taken a kind of hands-on approach when it comes to pretty much everything to do with not just Discovery itself, but also the CEO position and his relationship with talent. Apparently, he has made it very, very clear that his number one priority is to establish and create the foundations for those relationships in Hollywood, which, as another CEO is figuring out that is part of the job, and that's an important part of the job, right? So Zaslav is definitely making some moves that are different than some of his contemporaries out there. But it's quite interesting to kind of see the kind of structure that he's formed for himself, right? The article goes on to outline pretty clearly just what kind of corporate structure that they're looking at. And it's very much similar to how maybe a certain Bob Iger had structured Disney at a point in his tenure. So it's fascinating to kind of see what's going on in the entertainment landscape.
It is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. He is definitely, and I got the same impression reading the article. He was definitely taking a page out of Bob Iger's playbook, right, with this new structure. Now, here's the thing, though, because it mentions in here that, these creatives will report directly to him, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like, he wants a very hands-on approach and sort of that direct communication with his studio chiefs and what have you.
Right.
At face value, it kind of seems very micromanaging, where it's like, I'm the manager. I need to know everything that's going on, right? At face value, that's kind of what it comes off as. Now, for Bob Iger, it worked because Bob Iger is very well, he's very smart. He's a very smart businessman.
Yeah.
Almost a politician, almost, with how smooth he is and how he's very conscious of perception and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
Now with Bob Iger, this model worked very well for him, right? Because Bob Iger had the business intuition and everything to kind of guide the ship. Now, I don't know Zaslav, but there's a risk though when you take on this kind of like hands-on approach and everything kind of goes through you personally,
right?
You know, because if you're not the guy who has good instincts, or you're not the guy who knows the right moves to make, well, this can go sour very fast. Anyone who's had an office job will know this. If you have a manager who isn't really that well versed in what they do, and they're kind of a micromanager, the ship can sink really fast, right? Now, if you have a leader who is a micromanager who knows what they're doing, like a Walt Disney, then you can go to new heights, right? So the micromanaging thing isn't necessarily bad. It's just that you need the proper leader kind of facilitating that. And it's yet to be seen if Zaslav is that guy. It worked for Bob Iger. It worked for Walt Disney. Will it work for Zaslav? That's still up in the air, in my opinion.
And to add some more additional clarity to that, Bob Iger, yes, he did have this kind of organizational structure, but he was really kind of hands off in a lot of it. And he would only, kind of conflict resolute. He would kind of come in when the time was appropriate for him to step in. Everybody kind of had his ear, but as far as input from him directly, it was very touch and go, so to speak, and especially it was conditional on each individual project. Whereas like a Michael Eisner, he had his pots. He had his hands in every single pot out there, right? He had his his tendrils in pretty much every single facet of the Disney company. And it sort of sounds like through this structure, that's kind of like what Zaslav wants to do. He's like, hey, I pick up the phone, we correspond, I expect you to have an answer, kind of thing. So it kind of sounds like he is very much more hands-on than even Bob Iger himself, with a kind of a similar organizational structure. And like you said, I mean, that can go south pretty fast if you don't have the right instincts. And they're giving him an outsized role within this whole organizational structure, especially for a guy who previously was working kind of in the TV space and not really in the film space. So quite interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, and Discovery is no mom and pop organization, but it's also not Warner Brothers. Like you said, it was really in that TV cable space. And while it's a sizable company, it's not Warner Brothers though. Warner Brothers is it's a completely different animal, and now he's kind of taking this hands-on approach for a company much, much bigger than what he's used to dealing with. Yes. The question comes in: is it too much? We don't know. I mean, he might be able to handle it, but that is a lot to take on, coming from just running a cable company, conglomerate, to Warner Brothers, who owns oh my gosh, I don't even know how much. They were the biggest entertainment company for the longest time, for years, until I think recently. That's a lot to put on your plate. That's a huge jump. I mean, that's a lot.
And this CEO is coming into this kind of film game through Warner Brothers at a very interesting time in Warner Brothers history as well. Not only are they, merging with this Discovery to make this kind of big empire that they have going on over there, but look at Warner Brothers' recent portfolio. You have, on one end, the kind of the trades made a lot of this, in the last few days, which is why I'm bringing it up partially. But you have the kind of controversies with the Potter franchise. You have Ezra Miller out there, getting into his problems right there. You have J.K. Rowling with those controversies out there. You have all this kind of stuff. And then you have this kind of prospect of a kind of a dying franchise, this previously crown jewel. I mean, the Potter franchise was $1 billion a year franchise. I mean, you just gotta be honest. And when that kind of goes away and you have these subsequent films, these prequel films, these Fantastic Beasts films not really living up to the high bar that was set by their predecessors, it's really, made a lot of people pause and made a lot of people go like, hey, do we necessarily want to drag this whole thing out through to 5 films, or do we want to just stick with the 3 we have? Let's see what the box office does on this latest film, and kind of see. But you got that going on. Right. And a lot of that was, Alan Horn being taken away from Warner Brothers, to Disney and stuff like that. But then you have the DC side, and the DC side's all over the shop. I mean, you got billion-dollar hits, and then you got things that are, hugely divisive. You got things that are, that are just disconnected from the franchise, so to speak. And so you've got some stuff going on over there. Apparently, Discovery is wanting to completely, kind of change course and change the crew of the ship, so to speak, and reformat and everything like that, which would be like the 3rd time that's happened over there. So you got all these dynamics kind of playing out everywhere. And Zaslav's the kind of the top tip of the spear here. And is he necessarily going to make the right moves at each one of these junctures to put, this kind of WB Discovery entity in a good financial position going forward? I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. And it's interesting because there are a lot of agendas in not just politics, with just even the film industry, Hollywood, and what have you.
Yeah.
And you brought up a great point to me via text message earlier today, saying how it's interesting how all these trades, and especially certain ones like Hollywood Reporter, are really vying for this guy. They're really, the puff pieces coming out of the trades for this guy are out of control. Like they are he is the holy one, he is, the savior of all film, and it's really funny. And like it juxtaposes like with the Chapek stuff this particular article, which you mentioned to me, really talks about like, Zaslav is this perfect guy. He's restructuring everything just perfect. But then there's this Chapek, right? They dedicate like 2 and 3 paragraphs to like, then there's Chapek who's doing everything wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And it's interesting. And we've talked about this with Alia, right?
Yeah.
Like with the whole Bob Iger sabotage kind of angle, and how it's always the Hollywood Reporter and like Variety, and then now Hollywood Reporter's coming out with the pro Zaslav stuff and using it as a way to sort of go after Chapek. To your credit, that's a great point, Dre. What do you think? Can you expand upon that? And
oh yeah. Well, that's why it was great article, great read. But look at who they focus on. In that same article, talking all about Zaslav and singing his praises, well, it's Bob Chapek. I think he gets at least maybe 3 or 4 mentions in that entire article there, and 2 whole paragraphs dedicated to him. It's like, why are you juxtapositioning these 2 things so hard? And it's really, as much as this is kind of lifting up this golden child that is Zaslav, it's also an attack and critique on Bob Chapek. And really, that speaks to your other point, OG, that you've made on this show in the past, that the cultural influence of Disney, even when they're talking about somebody else, they can't keep Disney out of their mouths. That really is, at kind of the heart of this whole thing. As much as this, I mean, even if you look at the top, image with, Zaslav with the wizard kind of thing, they really are propping him up. Juxtapose that with some of the illustrations that they've done on Bob Chapek, and that gives you an idea of where they stand on both those figures. They are still criticizing Chapek. They still are slinging, these kind of stones and arrows at him. In an article that they're kind of propping this guy up, and honestly, this speaks to like how much Chapek has kind of shaken things up around there. Yeah. It speaks to the kind of, hey, play ball, because we'll prop you up like this, or we'll tear you down, so to speak. And Zaslav is all too happy to go ahead and be that poster child, right? He's all too happy to get those praises, and he is structuring his company in a style that juxtaposes, or I should say, it's different than what Chapek is doing, right? Oh. He is saying, hey, relationships first. I haven't seen that from Chapek. So even he is watching this, and the Hollywood Reporter is kind of going through with that. So what I meant to say, their text was, look at who they mention, look at why they're mentioning them, and look at why they might be, piecemealing this, or structuring their article in this way. There is commentary there, and it's reading loud and clear.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Hollywood hates Bob Chapek.
Oh, yeah.
It's very much a Mean Girls, you can't sit with us kind of mentality with him, because he doesn't come from the Hollywood side. Yeah, Chapek feels very uncomfortable with the whole elbow rubbing, smoozing thing. You can tell, and they don't like that. They want the ass kissers. They want the smoozers. They want those people running these major studios, and it really bothers them. I think that Chapek is not that guy.
They want a seat at the table when it comes to power. They want that influence. They want that kind of control over the kind of entertainment complex that Chapek is, not so willing to give these creatives control, not so willing to kind of kowtow to this group of these Hollywood moguls and elites over there in the entertainment world. So it is fascinating to see.
It is, and I think it surprised the industry how fast it became Chapek's Disney.
Yeah,
I think it surprised Bob Iger too. I think that Bob Iger was expecting it to take a while for Chapek to get out of the shadow. It took a few months, but at the end of the day, I mean, it became Chapek's Walt Disney Company very fast, very fast. And he wasn't the yes man. He wasn't just like, I'm going to just kind of do whatever Bob Iger did. He became his own. For better or worse, he became his own man and his own executive, and he did a lot of things that Bob Iger wouldn't have done. And I think that ruffled a lot of feathers, both with Bob Iger and the industry.
Oh, absolutely, it did. And part of that, obviously, a lot has to do with Chapek's philosophy and mentality, which we'll get into in one of the upcoming segments here. But really, it was sink or swim. He had to, do a lot of these changes very, very quickly in order to kind of keep the company afloat and to ensure that the course was headed towards a financially stable position at a time when a lot of the company's assets were down, or non-existent essentially. So, it's a little bit of that, but what that has kind of done, the reverberations that have been made because of those decisions, well, he's made a lot of enemies. He's made a lot of people who are, who don't like having their power and authority questioned. And that's why they come after Kareem Daniels, because Kareem Daniels is kind of the heart of that, right? The lead gatekeeper, so to speak. Yeah. And it's kind of fascinating to witness.
Well, and real quick to close out this segment, Kareem Daniels, actually, first time I ever saw him interviewed, it was for the Oscars like a week or so ago.
Sure.
And I could even link that down below because it's a pretty interesting interview. But he talks about like growing up, like the impact the movies had on him, and he said his favorite movie was The Empire Strikes Back. And hey, man, anyone who has great taste like that, he can't be too bad. So.
he can't be too bad. He can't be too bad. But we will see how he is made to be too bad, and why that might be shortly.
Yep, absolutely. So the next topic is the Walt Disney Company is shaking things up a little bit with the public relations, because I'm really shocked by this, Dre, because the PR stuff has been fantastic lately. Yeah, what's going on? No, kidding.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, they've been buttoned up, and oh man, that image is awesome right now.
Yeah,
not really.
No, it's been terrible, and they announced a new global communications director.
Yeah,
and her name is Kristina. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name correct or not, but I believe it's Schake, Kristina Schake.
Yes.
Now, if you can kind of elaborate a little bit on her, and I think you have a screen, right? You want to share too as well in regards to this, or
it's in regards to this. We'll hold off on it though. Hold off on it just for a second. The thing with Schake is she's most noteworthy in the political world than she is in the entertainment world. And politically speaking, she is, she's quite the figure. Apparently, she was on the Obama administration and kind of the later years there, and also the kind of campaign advisor or lead counsel for the Hillary Clinton campaign back in 2016. Well, we all know how that went. It's quite an interesting person to get. But I think the larger story about her history is how she was instrumental in getting Proposition 8 kind of passed and really kind of changing the narrative surrounding the LGBTQ plus community around kind of these gay and lesbian rights, and how that was perceived onto the public. And she was kind of instrumental in making that more of like, hey, you know what, this should be accepted. This shouldn't be outlawed, and here's why. And kind of making it kind of a human rights issue and all of that kind of thing. She was kind of instrumental in kind of laying those foundations for what actually ended up happening in the Supreme Court. So it is kind of fascinating how they would get somebody like this, and obviously that speaks to the notion of some of the criticism as laid on the doors of Disney, right? Yeah. By both factions. And it's going to be interesting to kind of see what she does and kind of reform the image of Disney right now, because right now it is badly tarnished, and that's kind of the slides I'll get into. But what say you, OG? How do you think of those?
Well, yeah, I mean, this choice was not an accident. They definitely picked her, I think, for a few reasons. Number one, I think, like, look, they're trying to kind of dig their way out of this whole issue with the Florida bill. And Bob Chapek already has a couple of people, I believe, on his team in regards to public relations that are like former Bush administration officials. I think Disney wanted to sort of bring someone on who was a lot more progressive, more left leaning, to sort of cool, kind of ease the tension in the industry, so to speak, and with the community, the LGBTQT plus community. So they bring in Kristina Schake, who, she's, like you said, worked for Obama, worked for Hillary. She was an advocate for gay rights, things like that. So I think that's definitely something at play here when they chose her, right? Like, you don't want to choose like a conservative that might put more fuel on the fire for a lot of these groups. So they chose someone like Schake. Also, it's interesting because Hillary Clinton is very much a Chapek kind of figure. And I might get some heat for this, but look, this is just like kind of like an objective observation that I'm making here. Sure. Hillary Clinton is not a Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a very principled guy, whether you agree or disagree. Bernie believes what Bernie believes. Whether you want to come on board and join the Bernie train, great. If you don't, fine. But Bernie's ideology and his mindset has not changed in God knows how long. Okay, this guy has had the same message for a long, long time. He sticks to it. Hillary Clinton is not that politician. Hillary Clinton is very much wherever the winds kind of blow, that's where she's going to go so she can get the votes. Yeah. Chapek is kind of that same kind of person in the corporate level, a data-driven guy. Wherever the consumer wants him to go, which in Hillary's case would be the voters, but wherever the consumer wants him to go, he'll go. So if everyone wants this, he'll go there. If everyone wants that, he'll go there, right? Data-driven. He's a data-driven CEO. Hillary was a data-driven politician. So it kind of makes sense to get Kristina Schake in that regard because she's managed someone similar, in my opinion, to Bob Chapek with Hillary Clinton. And Hillary Clinton was also, just like Bob Chapek, a very controversial figure, and stuff like that. And it was very polarizing. Other people love her. She has fans, like, very passionate fandom. But then she also has people that really despise her,
Greatly.
So Kristina has, like, the experience with that, right? Like, sort of. So I can see why they chose her. It's just, I don't know. It's just Hillary Clinton's campaign wasn't exactly successful in 2016. So it's like that kind of speaks to, Miss Saki's effectiveness. I don't know, but
yeah. And the thing about Schake was that was quite interesting was, and I think this is kind of why they might have chosen her, right? Because my feeling was, well, there's really two ways you can go forward here. You can either pivot away from the kind of messaging that you put out here in relation to the bill and these kind of social issues and so forth, or you can try to get people to kind of understand your side and kind of change public sympathy that way. That is a very uphill battle. But I mean, look, Schake has experience with this, obviously, with the gay rights kind of issues. Previously, that was a very partisan issue, and one of her specialties was making it nonpartisan and really making it about human rights values and so forth, and was instrumental in like I said, getting that Supreme Court decision made because of that kind of reshifting of the narrative. But when it comes to Disney itself, that's going to be a tough proposition. Speaking on the issue of data, well, there was a new poll that was done. I kind of like to see the polls, kind of like to see what they say. What's the public sentiment like? This is why we want to go ahead and show these screens here. So this is a poll by Trafalgar, pretty reputable group. Who has gotten a lot of the previous political races pretty much correct. And they asked this question. News reports reveal Disney is focusing on creating content to expose young children to sexual ideas. Does this make you more or less likely to do business with Disney? And the reason they asked this is because of a lot of the, videos that have kind of gone viral from this Reimagine Tomorrow, these kind of Reimagine Tomorrow sessions that they've had. And it's kind of one step up from that started with HB 1557 to now, right? And it really is like, are you going to continue to do business with Disney or are you not? Like, is this a game changer for you, essentially, right? And this is what Schake is going to, this is what she's kind of up against here because, well, if you see right here, if you combine less likely and much less likely, we're talking about 68%, almost 70% of people are, and much less likely is the overwhelming majority on this, less likely to do business with Disney going forward. This is potentially devastating to Disney, depending on how this all kind of plays out. Right. Whether it's going to be, hey, we don't, look, if it's one of those, well, we were going to go to 6 Disney movies a year. Now we're going to go to 5. Okay, well, that's not going to be huge, right? But what if you have a lot of cancellations in Disney Plus subscriptions, especially when we know that those Disney Plus subscriptions is instrumental in propping up the stock price as it currently exists? What happens there? And to more illustrate this point right here, you would think that they would have a bunch of conservatives in this poll, right, being a disproportionate influence to this poll. And yes, on the one hand, you have 85% of conservatives in this poll saying less likely, right? But this actually is interesting because it's actually somewhat bipartisan. In fact, almost 50% of Democrats, of left-leaning individuals, agree with this sentiment that they're less likely to do business with the mouse. And it goes on. No party affiliation, 72%. Interesting. It's how likely are you to support family-friendly alternatives to Disney? 69% likely that they are going to go with, hey, maybe with your family vacations, maybe you go to Universal instead of Disney, or maybe you go to a Warner Brothers film instead of a Disney film, that kind of thing, right? And you have age participation, and it breaks down thusly, right? You have significant margins of kind of each represented in this poll, but I want to get to the other parts of this. Yeah, the crosstabs here. You have that. But then it also, like age group, for example. Look at that. Less likely, much less likely, more likely, somewhat more likely. Less likely to do business with Disney. I mean, it's all across age groups. You would think that, it's the old fuddy-duddies that have problems with this. No, young people do. 18 to 24-year-olds. I mean, we're talking over 50% right there.
Yeah.
60% if you look at those numbers.
It's wild.
You're talking, hey, maybe ethnicities. Look at this. We know that there's a big Hispanic population, both in Florida and in Southern California especially, who frequent the parks, right? Look at the less likely and much less likely in the Hispanic groups there.
Wow.
You're talking 70%. This is going to be, this is kind of the stuff that they brought in Schake for.
Right, right. And this is honestly, and whether you supported the bill, don't support the bill, or whatever, but this is exactly why Chapek didn't want to touch it.
Yes.
And look, you don't have to agree with Chapek. You can despise the bill, and that's fine. But I think that we can all understand at least why he didn't want to get involved. This is why.
Yes.
Because once you dive into this world, it becomes politically we're so divided in this country.
Yeah.
And you start to go down this road, and you're going to start dividing your consumers.
Yes.
And this is why Chapek, being a data guy who really, honestly, I don't think Chapek cares about politics at all. No. I really don't. He's all about the data. He's all about the money. He's all about consumers. He doesn't care about it. And he saw the writing on the wall with this, that this is going to piss people off on one side, make the other side happy. But you're always, it's the trap. You fall on one side of the trap or the other once you say something. So it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You're right. This is a huge uphill battle for Psaki. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how she navigates these waters. They're in a precarious position now,
They are. And we're already starting to see the effects of that poll right there. Because we've had Alia on in the past, amazing contributor to the channel, right? And she gets, much of her insight, much of her input from, somebody named Matt Bellany. He's been an insider for years, runs a blog. He's the guy that knows a lot of the kind of political and social undercurrents when it involves these kind of entertainment juggernauts, right? And he was on a podcast recently, and he was saying that he got a call from a kind of a travel agency that kind of, it's like almost like a Getaway Today kind of outlet. It's not the biggest company in the world. It's smaller. But, they have a lot of clients that, set up their vacation packages to Disney and so forth. Apparently, he got a call from one of those people and said, why are all these people canceling their vacations to Walt Disney World and Disneyland?
Wow.
It's already started, folks. It's already started to affect the company. Now, as far as how much, we really don't know. But these things, when you take these stances and when you have things that might be divisive to many Americans, these are some of the consequences from those actions. In fact, I was going to touch on this before, but Kareem Daniels, one of the reasons why he was put in that kind of role where he kind of controlled where things go, right? He kind of controls where things are going to live in this kind of distribution network that the Disney company has assembled for itself. One of the reasons was to kind of filter through the content as it was coming in and coming out, and ensure that these kind of socially divisive or socially kind of maybe politically charged issues might not be so embedded in their films and content going forward. It was one of the reasons why he was placed there. So now all that's being undone from this kind of this horrific news cycle that's kind of plagued the company. And now we're seeing people calling, the Disney company the G word. I won't repeat it just because of the YouTube censors on here, but they're being affiliated with a lot of bad stuff right now. And again, this new this new kind of PR maven that they've hired, she's got to work cut out for her.
Yeah, no, I know. They call it the G word, and then if they backtrack, then the other side calls them bigots or something else. And this is just a never-ending fight. And it's like, I love the Walt Disney Company. I just want them to make really good content, make really cool stuff at the parks, and I'm just kind of exhausted by all of this noise. I really am. It gets so much, and really it's crazy. It's crazy. And a lot of these other studios, we've talked about many times on the show, that they kind of don't have to deal with this. Universal or Paramount or even like WB, Warner Brother, like they don't have to deal with any of this. They can be quiet and it's all good. And Disney, they're just a cultural juggernaut. And it just they get under this microscope like no other, and it's tough waters to navigate. And I don't envy Miss Schake at all.
No.
I do think it was the right decision though overall for Chapek to sort of like reboot his communications team with her.
Oh yeah, so anybody. Absolutely.
Yeah, he needed a change definitely after the Florida bill, but we'll see. We'll see. She's dealt with a lot. This woman has dealt with a lot of PR messes. I mean, come on, she worked for Hillary Clinton, so let's just put it,
Yeah,
so she has experience, right? She's had experience, but we'll see how well she does,
I just go back and I think about Chapek, and I just, it brings this to mind.
You were the chosen one. Bring balance to the force, not leave it in darkness.
You just can't help but think. It's like. I thought we were going towards a new direction where Disney, for better or for worse, might be this more kind of unifying brand and propel the company forward and stuff like that. And to see how it's kind of unraveled so far, oof,
we'll see.
Could have gone better.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, a lot of people now are speculating, including the trades. Hey, look, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for Chapek when you have the trades not only speculating if you're going to last past February of 2023, but even putting specific names as your replacement. Yeah. I think it was Hollywood Reporter or Variety. I forgot which one, but they did a piece a few weeks ago speculating that, Tom Staggs could come back and replace Chapek, Peter Rice, which we talked about him being a potential replacement for Bob Chapek. But when the trades are saying this stuff, something is up, and the trades are not, they're not really gossip columns. You know what I'm saying? Like if they're putting these names out there, Peter Rice, Tom Staggs, even Kevin Mayer,
right?
These are more than likely coming from the trades, more than likely it's not just mere speculation. These are the names that are probably circulating internally, and that's why these big trades are bringing them up. Something is afoot here. And I think those are the big names that are being considered to replace him if he does step down. And it's looking more and more likely that he probably will, but we'll see.
The Zaslav thing, that article, the dynamics within the company, all of that, it's all kind of intermixed. It's all kind of this concerted effort to unseat Chapek. And all Chapek can do is
apologize for not being the ally that you needed me to be.
And that's all he can do. And hopefully it's enough because the walls are closing fast, Chapek. There's no better way to say it.
Well, and some people I think Chapek is a good. I think he's good in like an executive position where he's under someone else's lead. Yeah. He's got a business mind. The guy obviously knows his stuff. Michael Eisner vouched for him. Bob Iger obviously felt he was talented because he promoted him like 3 times and he handpicked him as CEO. Right. So obviously there's something there inside Chapek that these executives see and they're like, wow, this guy has what it takes. He's got the chops. Yeah. But it's different being a business-minded executive and knowing your way around that world and being a leader.
Yeah.
And he's not a leader. That's the problem. He's not a guy who can take the company and lead. He does much better, I think, as sort of like a supporting role. You know what I'm saying? And
probably.
Yeah, he's just not the guy to lead the company, guide the ship. He's just not. And his time, I think, I don't think he's going to be CEO for a very long time. I really don't. But we'll see. Well, hey, maybe he'll surprise us. Maybe he'll outlast Bob Iger. Who knows?
It's all going to come down really to the next couple of quarterly earnings. The next one in particular after this very, very bad month that Disney's been having lately, that will be very, very telling. That'll be very, very telling. Look for those Disney Plus subscription numbers because if they're off, that does not point to good signs. Not for the company, not especially to Chapek himself.
Right. And also look for, if he does have a good quarter, look for the hit pieces that follow. Because look, timing, there are no coincidences. No coincidences, my friends. If they're going after Chapek, they want him out. Like we talked about here with Hollywood Reporter trying to make Zaslav like the king and kind of like juxtapose that and make Chapek look bad. If Chapek has a huge win again with this quarter coming up.
Correct.
Well, they can't have that. They can't have Chapek take the W. So look at the timing of the hit pieces that follow. Because if there's a hit piece, a big scathing report on Chapek the day after, those really good earnings reports or a day or two after, well, you your antenna should go up a little bit, because that there's a little bit of an agenda there. There's the timing says a lot. So we'll see.
I would also say if there's a big hit piece before the earnings report, that's also one of those, like,
that's true.
We know the numbers are going to be good. Let's get the hit pieces on them now.
Yep.
So,
yep.
There you go. That's
interesting episode of the Orange Nerd Show. We talked a lot today about Kristina Schake. We talked a lot about Warner Brothers Discovery, which is going to be a huge player, I think, in all of this, with Zaslav. It was a fantastic show. I want to thank you, Dre, for coming on today. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Best place to find me is going to be at Vash Sky on Twitter, right down there, just like it's spelled. Great conversations, like I said, as always. And the best place to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. There you go.
Perfect. And everybody watching, thank you so much. Make sure you share the video. The more you share the video, the better the channel does. And It just supports us. And we really do appreciate it. We appreciate it a whole lot. We got a lot of shares actually from was it Tattle?
It was Tattle on the last one, yeah. So shout out to the group at Tattle right there. They love talking about a lot of people on there, and I don't know, for we were happy to be part of at least a portion of that conversation. So yes, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the shares. And, every share helps. Every like helps. And so we do appreciate it here on OG55. We really do. It does not go unnoticed. Absolutely not. But comment down below with your thoughts on the Chapek stuff, the David Zaslav stuff, the Iger. There's a lot of corporate politics and just a lot of moving parts with this stuff. It's fascinating to watch. But thank you all for watching. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you very much.